There were failures in sharing information, that the bomber should have been referred to the PREVENT programme in 2015 or 16, although Sir John says it's unclear whether that would have led to action. But these are hard conclusions to hear, especially for those who have lost loved ones. The Home Secretary has rightly said that agencies and counter-terror police work immensely hard to keep us safe every day. And Sir John also says in his report that they have disrupted 27 major Islamist extremist terror plots in recent years, in addition to 5 right and left-wing terror plots too. And that is as a result of their immense efforts night and day. And it is because they are dedicated to keeping us safe. They also recognise the importance of facing up to things going wrong. And they've expressed their profound sorrow and apologies too. So John has rightly made recommendations, and rightly everyone is seeking to take those forward, and we should support them in doing so. But I want to press the Home Secretary just on some of the details of those measures. Firstly, on Martin's Law, all of us support the work of Figan Murray and many of the Manchester survivors to introduce this. Can she tell me the timetable? Will it have second reading before the summer recess? On the closed recommendations, which clearly are important, will that entire report be shared with the Intelligence and Security Committee so they can also oversee the changes that need to be made? On the issues around prisons and also around the PREVENT programme, the bomber repeatedly visited someone who was in prison for terrorist offences, and that did not trigger a further assessment, despite some of the wider things that were known about the bomber and his family. That does raise serious concerns. Will she look again at the process for monitoring prison visits, and will she accept the recommendations made by Sir John about the changes in approach to visits to terrorist and extremist prisoners that needs to be taken, and also his recommendations for changes to the law? Sir John also concludes it's highly likely that the bombers used a video online to help make the device in 2016. It is appalling that video was not taken down. It's also very troubling that 7 years on, we don't have the online safety bill on the statute. It also, though, raises the concerns about the lack of a proper strategy on online radicalisation. So can I urge her to urgently revise the countering extremism strategy, which is now 8 years out of date, despite her having received, or her predecessors having received, recommendations from the Countering Extremism Commissioner in 2018 that it was already out of date then? Will she urgently revise it to address online radicalisation? Sir John also warns about the potential indicator of extremism being violent misogyny in this particular case, and there are patterns here affecting different kinds of extremism: Islamist extremist, far-right extremist and incel extremist. So will she commission a review into what role violent misogyny may be playing and how far that should be understood as a potential indicator of extremism and radicalisation? Sir John also raises workforce pressures, particularly in the northwest. And given the new threats from hostile states, can she comment on what her assessment is of resources? And finally, in case the concerns were raised that the security services did not understand the threats from Libya sufficiently, and that was a wake-up call, will she recognise that shows the importance for them to continually reassess different threats and not to have any hierarchy of threats or extremism, but to pursue the evidence wherever it takes them? The Home Secretary raised the survivors, and we think of them. Many of them, however, still feel they lack the support and the help that they need, even so many years after the terrible, truly terrible things that have happened. Will she meet with survivors of terror, and will she look again as well at what further support can be provided for those who lost loved ones and those who were hurt in that terrible event?
Secretary.
I thank the Right Honourable Lady for her questions, which I will address in due course, and I agree entirely with her assessment that we must now all come together, the government, the security services and the emergency services, to learn the lessons of this awful tragedy and work to reduce the likelihood of future attacks. It was and it is a truly sad and terrible incident, but I want to reassure the public that our priority is to keep them safe. We must root out extremism wherever we find it and give no quarter to political correctness as we do so. We must respond quickly to all criticisms, but we must also recognise the serious work that has taken place since the attack. So, coming to some of the questions that she raised, in relation to Martin's Law, the government will publish draft legislation for scrutiny in the spring, and after that introduce a bill to the House as soon as parliamentary time allows. Its progression after that is dependent on the approval by Parliament and agreeing a date for its commencement, and there will be a lead-in time allowing for those captured to prepare. Martin's Law is one part of our extensive efforts across government, including those of the police and security services, to combat the threat of terrorism. There remains an extensive programme of guidance in place, which has been developed by security experts, counter-terrorism policing and other partners to provide stakeholders and others responsible for public places with high quality advice. But I'm very much looking forward to moving forward with the solution and presenting the bill relating to Martin's Law. When it comes to prisons, we have published a new policy framework allowing greater scrutiny around contact between terrorist prisoners and the public. Our new approved contact scheme to be implemented this year will allow greater checks on visitors and phone contacts on those convicted of terrorist and terrorist-connected offences, regardless of the category of prison in which they are held. In relation to further prevention, there is a large amount of work that's been done since 2017 to support and improve the consistency of local authority prevent delivery and to manage the risks posed by subjects of interest. That includes additional funding and support for the highest priority areas, the publication of a prevent duty toolkit, and the development of the multi-agency centre programme. And we're working across government to mitigate the risk posed by those about whom we have concern. And lastly, she asked about support for families going through this unimaginable process, and that's why I welcome the Deputy Prime Minister's announcement last week about the government's commitment to legislate as soon as possible to establish an independent public advocate to support victims through a major or following a major incident. The IPA will help victims to navigate the systems and the processes that may follow a major incident, such as the police investigations, the inquests and the inquiries. I hope it's not used ideally, but in the event of a tragedy, we will have resources, expertise and a proper structure in place to support families in this unimaginable situation. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know the whole House will join me. We must move forward now with the solution to ensure that our frameworks and our processes are as robust as possible so that we never see anything like this again.
Chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee, Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And on behalf of the ISC, I extend our deepest sympathy to the families and individuals so dreadfully affected by this terrorist act. I welcome the publication of the third volume of the Manchester Arena Inquiry Report and express strong appreciation for the work of the inquiry team. Of course, the committee will carefully consider the report and also Sir John Saunders' request that we should monitor the implementation of the inquiry's recommendations. In the meantime, does the government acknowledge and accept that the ISC is the only committee of Parliament equipped with both the facilities and the clearances fully to undertake this type of classified scrutiny?
Well, the chairman, Sir John Saunders, did make it clear that he was determined that the recommendations are monitored, and he's made arrangements with the ISC to that effect. Volume 3 Open has only just been published, and the Volume 3 Closed recommendations have not yet been shared with the government. The government will carefully consider the report's findings and recommendations in full. We will also consider any recommendation that Sir John makes about the role of the ISC and the role that it can play in conjunction in light of the Memorandum of Understanding that exists between the committee and the government, and that MOU is available on the committee's website. But yes, effectively, the ISC is a very effective and secure forum in which, as has happened in the past, delivery on the back of these inquiries can be properly scrutinised.
SNP spokesperson Mari Black.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The awful events on the 22nd of May 2017 led to the deaths of 22 innocent people and hundreds more being injured and affected for the rest of their lives. Now, of course, ultimate responsibility does lie with the bomber who detonated his homemade device in the foyer of Manchester Arena as the crowds left an Ariana Grande concert. Now, I welcome the fact that